Governor Rauner breaks through the clutter with an R-rated ad, and the election is less than 2 weeks away. We'll talk about it next on Capitol View. Welcome to Capitol View, the program where we talk about state issues, sometimes federal issues, and how they just might affect your life. I'm Bernie Schoenburg from the State Journal-Register. We are less than 2 weeks away from an election. We have seen interesting and odd developments on the campaign trail and through your television set. Here to discuss this with me, Kent Redfield is back, Professor Emeritus of Political Science, University of Illinois Springfield. Welcome, Kent.
Good to be here.
And Jaclyn Driscoll is back. She is in Springfield for NPR Illinois. Thank you for being here, Jaclyn. Okay, I called it R-rated as we introduced the program, but Governor Rauner put out a campaign commercial, which he actually talked about on a radio show later in Springfield. You need to kind of break through to people, get some attention. He got some attention because what he had was somebody dressed as a clergyman, and that's the only face we really see, and then the backs of two men who are getting married, and they are supposed to represent J.B. Pritzker, the Democratic candidate for governor, Mike Madigan, the Speaker of the House, in what the ad calls an unholy alliance or an unholy union. And at the end, the clergyman says, and I now pronounce the state bleep, and it is a bad word. And it is, you can clearly see what the word is. It is a word that is not allowed on regular television stations. Kent, your thoughts about the ad?
Well, I guess it got people's attention, and some people might call it edgy. It certainly, compared to what used to be the standards about what you would put on TV for an ad, you something that has a hint of gay marriage, something that has a clergyman, a minister using profanity. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to find objectionable in this ad. The theme is Madigan and Pritzker are joined at the hip and they're going to ruin the state. This is a different way to say the same thing that the governor has been saying, and it got a lot of pushback from both in terms of kind of the implicit gay marriage theme,
right,
and then also the fact that you've had a clergyman using profanity, and so I'm not sure that's helpful. But as someone said, desperate people do desperate things sometimes, and this obviously seemed like a good idea when they were pitching ideas about how do we deal with being 15, 20 points behind.
Yeah,
this is it.
Equality Illinois is a major gay rights group in Illinois, and the executive director of that came out with a statement that this is very disappointing because Governor Rauner has actually officiated at least at one same-sex wedding that we know of, someone that was on his staff. He is very open to that kind of thing. He is, and yet this organization said you're making fun of same-sex marriage in doing this, and he claimed he is not. Jaclyn, any fallout that you see coming from this kind of controversy?
Well, I think that he got enough pushback that they released a new version of the ad where the mouth was blurred.
Oh, so you can't see what the word is, because it was really clear in the initial version that actually the campaign set out.
It was, and I saw an interview, I believe it was a Channel 5 out of St. Louis interview where he said, I don't condone using that language, but it was bleeped out, and so I'll use the word screwed instead, right?
Yeah, so as what he says the state would be if the Democrats control.
Right. The most, I think the most interesting thing that I gathered was reading some articles where Chris Mooney was talking about his analysis of it.
Right.
And
another professor in the U of I system. He used to be in Springfield, now he's in Chicago.
Right, and he said this might be an uncomfortable thing for kids or at the dinner table, and immediately I thought of the 2016 presidential campaign because that was what a lot of people were saying about now President Trump. So that kind of sparked some thought maybe he's trying to appeal to those far-right conservatives that aren't technically politically correct or in lockstep with what used to be political decorum. So I don't know, it was interesting.
It was interesting.
Caught attention.
I heard Governor Rauner on a radio show, San Madonia radio talk show host, WFMB in Springfield, a couple days after the ad came out. And this was also after some pipe bombs. None, as we tape this, have gone off, which is good. Nobody's been injured, but political people were targeted with bombs, and the host asked the governor about that, and the governor said, we really need to push for civility on all parts of our discourse. This came 2 days after and he did say he approved this ad. He doesn't approve them all, but he approved this one. He approved the ad with the clergyman swearing on screen. So somewhat of a mixed message. And it also, it came within a day of the governor putting out a very nice ad where he and his wife are sitting there talking about, saving the state and doing good for people. So Kent, he's trying to mix messages, but maybe is it the right-wing base that he lost in the primary to Jeannie Ives when he almost lost the challenge? Is that why he's...
I certainly think that's part of it. I think just being edgy and getting attention was another part of it that appealed to them. And now, but in typical Governor Rauner fashion, when he was on talk shows right after it came out, and they said, is this your ad? And he said, well, I don't know. I'll have to check. I mean, the governor has a habit of kind of distancing himself from things that he said.
Well,
and
by
done.
the time I heard him a couple days later, he did take credit for this one and said he did approve this one personally.
Yeah. So I think, but Chris Mooney is exactly right. I mean, when there are choices that every campaign makes, and so this made sense in terms of their narrative. Whether or not that really helps or not, it's really hard to say.
And I had called Chris for a column I wrote about this, and he said that he knows he has a list, or he has email or something, a message to hundreds of professors across the country, political scientists, and he said within an hour of showing them this ad, he got dozens of responses, people saying they haven't ever seen anything like this. He said he wondered if it could actually help the governor. He didn't really think it would because of the negatives, because you're crossing so many different lines. And he did mention that you make these choices, and so the choice is made.
One professor said it belonged in the political campaign hall of shame or something like that.
Campaigns and Elections magazine, which apparently they bad ads. So we will see. Obviously, the governor has been behind in the polls to J.B. Pritzker. There have been many, not many, but there have been significant bumps in the road for Democrat J.B. Pritzker, despite the fact that he's now poured, more than $160 million of his own money into his campaign. Cook County Inspector General had found that it was apparently designed to defraud, the way that they took toilets out of a mansion that the Pritzker family owns so that they could get lower property taxes. And Pritzker hasn't admitted wrongdoing, but paid back Cook County more than $300,000. And then there were 10 campaign staffers, 9 African Americans and a Hispanic person, who filed a lawsuit just within the last 2 weeks saying that there was a racist attitude and bad treatment within that campaign, which Pritzker has denied, as has Juliana Stratton, his running mate, an African American woman who's in the Illinois House. But none of these things have seemed to catch on. So again, Kent, the governor's looking to break through, and Pritzker still seems to be trying to ride high if he can make it through Election Day without any of these things catching him.
Yeah, and you're starting to see, Pritzker's running a mental health ad that is a pretty positive, who can be against, giving better treatment to people with mental illness. And so, he's trying to close in terms of again, not making a lot of waves, not taking a lot of risks. And the governor certainly has done a couple of ads that are designed to be more positive in terms of the effect, which is what you do at the end of the campaign. But it is, again, sometimes you get a sense of, you don't know who's in control because you keep going one direction versus another in terms of the governor's campaign. The Pritzker campaign has been, pretty risk averse, but pretty consistent in terms of what they've done.
Yeah, we will see that. Now, one of the other candidates, of course, is Sam McCann. We know him well in Central Illinois. His district includes part of Springfield. He's from Macoupin County. He was elected as a Republican. He actually came in on the Tea Party wave in 2010. He has differences with Governor Rauner because Sam is very conservative on social issues like abortion. When the governor, signed a bill, House Bill 40, to allow taxpayer-funded abortion. But but Sam McCann also, once he got in the Senate, and he likes working people anyway. He ran a construction firm, but there are so many state employees in the district that he has represented who are union members and who wanted a resolution, for example, to the AFSCME contract that the Rauner administration has not resolved since it expired in mid-2015 with more than 30,000 state workers. And McCann went with the union on some votes, and the governor actually ran somebody against him a couple years ago in a primary, and now Sam McCann is the Conservative Party candidate for governor and keeps needling the governor. Ran a very strong ad with this week, or at least put it out. I saw it on Facebook. It's probably on TV, where he's trumpeting basically President Trump support and showing like the illegals are overrunning our borders and we need to stop them. It's the kind of talk that Trump does, but Governor Rauner does not. So what's the McCann, what do we think the McCann effect will be on this campaign, Jaclyn?
I don't know if you all are like me in the sense that I've been trying to figure out Sam McCann since he announced he was running for governor. A lot of people are saying, including Governor Rauner, is saying that his candidacy is a ploy. I think he called it a sham. He's Madigan's candidate. One of the most interesting things that I've seen, we were talking about prior to the show, was the Tribune editorial that recently came out that talks about conservatives are being played, and he's running misleading mailers in districts with tight races that they say Madigan would like to win. So it's interesting to me that he's getting so much attention. He isn't polling terrible numbers. The Tribune is basically making this a Rauner-McCann race, and I think that's interesting because if he really is the Madigan candidate, I'd say Madigan is winning this one.
Well, and people think that at least he'll when they vote for McCann, it probably takes votes away from Governor Rauner and lets Pritzker win Kent.
Yeah,
and of course McCann denies this, and he's doing it for good conservative principles and all of that.
Well,
and I hardly know Madigan, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there clearly is that issue of the social conservative issues and the fiscal issues in general that Rauner almost lost the primary to Jeannie Ives over voters that were very dissatisfied with his ability to deliver, but also with his positions on an abortion bill and public funding of abortion, and we're not happy with a Safe Illinois kind of act that some people thought was like sanctuary cities, and so McCann is trying to get that territory of those Rauner voters, and Rauner would like them back. Most of McCann's money is coming from a Fight Back Fund, which is a dark money group, but which
is associated with Operating Engineers Local 150 and Countryside, which is a union that does give to candidates on both sides, including Jim Durkin gets their money on the Republican side, Republican leader of the House, as McCann pointed out recently.
So it's clearly union money, and now McCann has gone one step further, and he's actually attacking some conservative Republican legislative candidates, some incumbents, because they're taking money from Rauner, they're Raunerites, and
Rauner's not a true conservative,
not a true conservative, and a lot of this is motivated by the fact that Rauner funneled money through a couple of different groups to spend almost $3 million against him, trying to defeat him in the Republican primary two years ago, McCann.
And it was a very vicious race if you watch the TV ads around.
So there are lots of levels that this works at.
Yeah. The other thing that's happening as we tape this, we are awaiting the weekend visit to Murfreesboro of President Trump, who will be campaigning on his swing through the country to shore up Republican candidates. But Mike Bost, former Illinois House member who's in Congress for several years now and is running for another term and has had a close race, although the polls show that he's a little better off. We don't know at this point if Governor Rauner will join him there. Governor Rauner was unable to make it when the president visited Granite City, and we know that Governor Rauner, in trying to appease perhaps suburban moderate Republicans who may not like President Trump so much, he has really avoided for a couple of years even talking or mentioning Trump's name. So I guess we can only guess what's going on, but he is really walking on a balance beam, Jaclyn, and it's an interesting, just a dance that the governor has to do.
Definitely, and I think the first time I think you've covered the governor more extensively than I have for longer years. I haven't been here as long as you have, but the first time I ever even heard the governor really speak favorably about the president was at the State Fair this year, when he was complimenting his
Probably the
efforts
economic
on
development
trade,
plan,
yeah, and economics, and he's definitely
the tax cut. He likes the tax cut and what it could do for businesses across the country.
Right. He, like you said, he definitely is walking a fine line. He's trying to appeal to those far right conservatives that he lost, that we saw him lose in the primary. But there's a lot of other moderate Republicans that he doesn't want to make mad either. So it's almost like a lose-lose for the governor, I feel like.
And interestingly enough, the Republican Attorney General candidate, Erica Harold, is not going to be in Southern Illinois with
with the president?
With the president. She's announced that she's going to be doing she has events up in the suburbs she's committed to. And so, she's in a much better position than the governor is to kind of assume that she's going to collect those conservative votes down in Southern Illinois. She doesn't have to shore that up, but she's out trying to present herself as the independent voice that will keep an eye on the Democrats.
She actually so she's running against, so it's Erica Harold, and she's a Harvard-educated lawyer, works in Champaign-Urbana. She was Miss America in 2003, which I think helps. I mean, she presents herself well on her advertisements. She is very conservative on some social issues, and when she ran against Rodney Davis, a congressman, in a Republican primary 4 years ago, she expressed some very conservative views on things like gay marriage at the time, and she's pro-life on abortion. Kwame Raoul is the Democratic candidate for Attorney General. He took Barack Obama's place in the state Senate from the south side of Chicago when Barack Obama went to the United States Senate. Kwame Raoul has, worked as a lawyer, passed legislation for prison reform, that kind of thing. Says he's committed to some of the social issues like a woman's right to choose that Erica Harold is not. Erica Harold said this shouldn't be an issue because I'll just enforce the law as Attorney General. But Erica Harold did come out with an ad even this week saying, if J.B. Pritzker wins and Mike Madigan is still in charge of the House, you'll need a good Republican in there to balance things and watch them, and I'll be Attorney General to watch them. Is that a fair? It's almost saying that Governor Rauner might lose, which is an odd admission for a candidate who's been supported by Governor Rauner.
And not only supported, but basically show-ponied around. He was clearly, she was his favorite candidate on the statewide ticket, as we saw at the statewide fair, as he paraded her on stage, and she was going to, take back Illinois with him. So it was peculiar that she even brought up the whole essence of, well, if JB and Mike Madigan are in charge, you're going to need me.
But with the polling showing that the governor is in more trouble and the Attorney General race might be closing, that maybe it makes sense for her. And I wonder if they, asked the governor if this was cool or just did it. I don't know.
Well, it certainly is a good strategy for her, and it allows her to frame her campaign in a way that I think is very effective. And in a Democratic state, you have to get crossover votes and present yourself in a way that you can build a coalition. But Governor Rauner is her biggest funder. Governor Rauner's main support person, Ken Griffin, the richest man in Illinois, is her second biggest funder. And so she is pretty much throwing the governor under the bus in terms of the way that she's kind of framing her campaign in terms of the close. And I think it's probably her best shot at winning in a Democratic state in a Democratic year is the kind of arguments she's starting to make.
Yeah, and I think for Kwame Raoul, what I'm sure is trying to emphasize is if it is a Democratic state and we believe in democratic things like I guess many Democrats are pro-choice, for example, and,
Right.
and if you're willing to take on President Trump without too much of a nudge, because he clearly says he would do like Lisa Madigan and join with other Democratic attorneys general and taking on things about immigration and other issues, whereas Erica Harrell, I think, has been less so. So the party differences are there, but there is an interesting dynamic that she's also running as perhaps the Republican backstop against a Democratic onslaught in the state of Illinois. So we'll see where that goes. Speaking of which, there was one candidate for governor I haven't mentioned yet today. Cash Jackson is the Libertarian. Somehow falls out of the conversation, except there's a very conservative state representative from up in the suburbs named Alan Skillicorn of East Dundee, who just this last week came out and said he couldn't endorse Rauner because of, I'm sure, some of those issues that made Jeannie Ives' candidacy in the primary take off, and Skillicorn was a Jeannie Ives person, but he endorsed Libertarian Cash Jackson. I don't know what that shows. It doesn't necessarily, I guess it just hurts the Rauner base and shows that there are cracks there.
It also means that if Rauner does lose, there's going to be a major war over who's funding the Republican Party, who's leading the Republican Party.
I think Jeannie Ives might be heading there because she keeps putting out press releases on the same letterhead that she was using when she was running for governor.
Yeah.
So I think she perhaps wants to be the leader of the Republican Party, or at least become certainly part of that conversation.
Or saving the environment by recycling.
Well, there is that. It's all digital. We have a lot of state employees in the area that watches the show, I hope. And the 4th District Appellate Court this last week ruled on an Illinois Labor Relations Board case about the AFSCME contract.
Yes.
That, again, expired in 2015. The governor, in early 2016, his team said, we're at impasse, so we can impose conditions. AFSCME said, no, we're not at impasse. We were talking. We just settled some things, and then you just quit negotiating. It's been in court ever since, and just fill us in where we are.
Well, the appellate court sent it back to the trial court, back to the
Labor Relations Board.
Saying your reasoning and is not consistent with previous precedents, and this doesn't look like an impasse to us, and therefore you need to keep, you need to reconsider this. The practical impact is that this stops the governor from imposing the changes that he wants involving health care, working conditions, a bunch of other things. It freezes it. Now the governor's office has to either go re-argue it in terms of the Labor Relations Board or appeal it to the Supreme Court. This obviously is not going to happen before Election Day. It probably now won't happen until a new governor or the old new governor is inaugurated next year. And so it puts off any kind of resolution of what's been, almost a 3-year standoff.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Although for the day-to-day employee, basically the old contract, because of the court action, just continues on, and that's
Right.
where it's at. Other than people haven't gotten some step increases, and there's been argument about that, and the governor's supposed to put aside some money for that.
And they will probably get some of that.
Yeah, but it's been a long road. A very interesting federal race in Central Illinois is, of course, the 13th Congressional District. U.S. Representative Rodney Davis of Taylorville going for his 4th term. He's a Republican from Taylorville. And Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan is a Democrat from Springfield, well-known in Springfield, certainly well-known now after Emily's List. And outside groups like the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee have come in with millions of dollars to add to the millions that she's raised to advertise on TV that Rodney Davis is not your friend and takes money from special interests and is against, he did oppose Obamacare, and the Democrats say that he won't protect pre-existing conditions, whereas Rodney Davis says the Republican plan I was for does protect pre-existing conditions, and he's gotten more than or at least $1 million from the Republican leadership nationwide, the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan's PAC. So, Jaclyn, this one is the one we hear most about if we watch TV, like on your old station, Channel 20. Where's that one going?
They have another debate on Monday. Is this their 3rd one?
I think it's going to be their 4th. I think
It's
that'll finish it up.
Well, I did watch your debate with them, and then I was a panelist in a debate in Urbana, and it's amazing to me that even with different questions, they can still say the same things, right? We do all this preparation.
Right,
we do, yeah. You've done it longer than I have, so I'm learning that 90% of being a politician is just talking points in your
knowing
head.
points, right.
But the healthcare, I think, is the dominating topic in this particular race. I think that Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan has I guess a little bit more to stand on there when she talks about him not standing up for pre-existing conditions, and he
Right.
says he is. And
he claims he is, and this is actually a debate nationwide. Democrats say Republicans who voted many times to get rid of Obamacare were not protecting pre-existing conditions, but the Republicans say there were many layers of protection and billions of dollars that would be given for the states to deal with that. And Rodney Davis clearly says that, so he says she's lying about me, and she says no, he's lying about me, because the Republicans through the super PAC are saying that she wants a total government-run health care for $32 trillion. She says she's not for that at all, and that's a wildly exaggerated figure. They even they sent a lawyer letter to stations to get that ad taken down, and the stations wouldn't take it down because any filament of truth in anything that, she said something once that could lead to something, but she says she's not for that. So, Kent, it's just your typical congressional races are so complicated because a bill like the health care bill is so many hundreds of pages, and you can pick out any little thing and attack the other side.
Oh, sure. But it is, healthcare has dominated it in terms of a policy area, which is not what the congressional Republicans were expecting when they passed the tax cut. And they were going to run on that. And yet it is this race, the race involving Peter Roskam, who's on Ways and Means up in Northern Illinois, they're fighting to try and get people to talk about tax cuts.
Right,
rather
and Rodney
than
Davis
healthcare.
and some of the ads for him do say we're saving the average family $2,000 a year, and Betsy doesn't like that. She's with Nancy Pelosi, and she says it was a gift to the rich and corporations, and that's about where we're going to have to end it, but we will be listening to those ads, and we will hear these arguments again. Kent Redfield and Jaclyn Driscoll, thanks for joining me. I'm Bernie Schoenburg. Thank you for joining me. Less than 2 weeks left. Take care, and we'll see you next time on Capitol View.